Hi guys, and welcome to a very special video today because my channel actually turns 5 years old. So I figured I would remake and very much improve my first ever video that I uploaded October 15th, 2012. The basic guide to handling and caring for leopard geckos. So this video will be split up into 5 main topics: setup, heating, lighting, diet and handling. Each one of course will be quite brief since I have made videos that go more in depth about each subject. Everything will be linked in the description down below, so please check that out once you finish watching this video. Before we start on the care topics, let's briefly discuss what exactly leopard geckos are. So leopard geckos, also known by their Latin name Eublepharus macularis, are crepuscular, ground-dwelling geckos that, unlike many other geckos, possess movable eyelids. They're found mainly in rocky grasslands throughout Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and North India. Adults can reach lengths of anywhere from 7 to 10 inches, however some giants and supergiants can get closer to about a foot long, and adult leopard geckos can weigh anywhere from 45 to way over 100 grams. So now let's start off with setup. For a single gecko, a 10 to 20 gallon tank is recommended. You can use vivariums, terrariums and even faunariums. My vivariums are each about 2 foot long. I have in the past used 18-inch faunariums, which are basically plastic tanks. However, I feel they're best used for very young geckos or as temporary tanks. Also, please note that any tank too big can cause problems with very small geckos, as they can fail to find sufficient heat, food and water in such a big tank, and this will cause them to stress easily. With glass terrariums, I'd suggest long and short tanks, so plenty of floor space, and never ever house a male and female together, 2 males together, or an adult and a baby together. Now in terms of arrangement, you want about 2 to 3 hides, so a warm, cold and shedding hide, as well as a water bowl, possibly a feeding bowl and fake plants if you wish. Alternatively, you can provide a natural tank. I am still learning to perfect this tank, but I have made a video on how I built it if you are interested in moving in that direction. Substrate is always a highly debated topic when it comes to leopard geckos, but for over 10 years I've used Eco-Earth without a problem, and most recently I've been using Arcadia's Earth Mix Arid for natural tanks. I've also done an in-depth video on leopard gecko substrates, which are linked below. Next up, heating. Now heat mats are usually your best bet when it comes to heating leopard geckos. Always use a thermostat to ensure your heating is measured and monitored correctly. Aim for about 30 to 32 degrees Celsius. Heat mats should cover about 1/3 to 1/2 of the gecko's floor space. I've always used 6x11 inch 7-watt Haberstat heat mats. Ceramic heaters or the new heat projector by Arcadia may be used, but once again you want to be very careful and use the correct types of thermostats to ensure your gecko is safely heated. Now for lighting. Now, unlike what I say in my older videos, I can now say that I would recommend UVB for leopard geckos. I'm just putting it out there though, it is just an option. Now, since leopard geckos have fairly thin skin and would usually expose themselves to the sun at dawn and dusk, so when the sun's exposure isn't as intense, a 2 to 5% UVB light is probably the best. LEDs may also be used if your room is too dark so the gecko can't distinguish day from night. However, I would not suggest using any kind of coloured night light, even those red heat lamps. I would not suggest, just because coloured lights are notorious for being disruptive to all kinds of reptiles, including leopard geckos. Next up, diet. Now variety is key when it comes to feeding geckos. If you can, you want to provide as many different suitable insects as possible, such as crickets, locusts, mealworms, moroworms, waxworms, hornworms, calciworms, silkworms. There's a lot of worms, dubia roaches, you name it, most of them they can eat, but whatever you do, never take insects from the wild and feed them to your geckos. Only feed captive bred insects to your geckos. That is incredibly important. Also, some insects like waxworms and moroworms should only be offered more as a treat rather than a staple diet. Another important thing to remember is that you must always gut load your feeder insects with vegetable scraps, insect fuel, you can hydrate them with fruit or bug gel. Basically, if your insects are healthy, then they will greatly benefit your gecko. Also, make sure you dust them with the correct supplements when you feed them to your gecko. This is an extremely important subject that I go into far more detail about in my supplement and feeding schedule video. Now, sadly, this is still one of those videos that doesn't really have that many views, and yet so many people, infuriatingly, will skip over the subject of supplements when it comes to owning any kind of reptile. And when I don't provide the correct powders, they wind up with very ill and fragile geckos. It can go downhill very quick, so if you haven't already, I strongly suggest checking out that video, and I will link that down below. And finally, handling. So how well do they tame? What's their general temperament? Well, leopard geckos are lovely and fairly docile creatures. They're quite hardy, but that doesn't mean they should be handled roughly. I usually suggest a scoop technique when picking them up, and if done correctly, they can tame fairly easily. They enjoy climbing up your arms, on your shoulders, along your back, and they even curl up to you when they need a little extra heat, and it's really, really cute. But please remember that rough handling can have the opposite effect. The gecko won't trust you very much, it can even eject its tail. The tail will eventually grow back, but it's never the same. So once you are taming your gecko, don't hand them out to your friends, especially ones that don't really know anything about reptiles. Don't get them out in front of cats and dogs, anything that will expose them to too much stress. Take little steps and remember the 3 C's. Be careful, consistent, and confident. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. This is only the basic care of a leopard gecko, so if you want to progress further, make sure you press the subscribe button, check out my video collection as I have an endless amount of leopard gecko related videos, and hopefully you'll learn something. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and goodbye.